why is it important that it's Solana, say or not important, but why do you think it's the most likely that this transformation is going to happen on Solana as opposed to, say, Stripe's L1 Tempo that it's building out, or some kind of other corporate blockchain of which we've seen many and probably will see more in the near future? Why is it going to be on the decentralized?
Yeah, it's a great
chain?
question. The bet that we are making is that Anza, Firedancer, and the entire ecosystem on Solana can move faster at hitting a point of velocity sufficient to absorb the $500 trillion of global securities that are traded every year. What I mean is this. Sure, Stripe could really propel that chain to be as advanced and as sophisticated as Solana, but it's playing catch up. We think that Anza, we think that Firedancer, we think that the ecosystem operating both in a decentralized way is going to always be a couple of steps ahead of the best. Now, this is not to say that Stripe, or let's say Nasdaq chain, if it ever came out, couldn't compete with Solana. But the question is, can they be better than Solana? I don't think that's possible right now. It's obviously a big fight, right? And Solana has to be very focused on the goal, which is the IBRL thesis, which is increasing bandwidth, reducing latency, scaling, speed, like being able to absorb the billion number. It's about 1 billion transactions a day that are executed on the current global securities market, right? Can Solana do that? Well, Solana can do it today, right? If you add up the number of transactions that Solana can execute per second, it could actually warehouse the total number of executed transactions. But of course, Nasdaq doesn't just, absorb executed transactions. It also absorbs packets for cancels and everything else. So it has some room to still scale. I venture to bet that about 1 million transactions a second will make it very competitive with Nasdaq. But when you look at Nasdaq versus Solana, you can't just look at tick to trade. You also must look at the T+1 settlement. And when you factor in T+1 settlement, no centralized system today, especially in TradFi, can compete with any decentralized network, right? You get instant settlement, and with Alpenglow, you're going to get settlement between 100 to 150 milliseconds, right? When you look at that versus T+1 settlement with Nasdaq, you're not going to be able to compete. Now, could Stripe come out with more competitive technology? Of course. But then that really undermines the decentralization thesis, which is that eventually you will hit escape velocity, which a decentralized network can advance and innovate faster than any other centralized system.
Have you, as an aside, have you always been this bullish on Solana? Like, this is one of the most bullish openers we've had maybe ever on this show. I'm curious, like, at what point you became this convicted that, like, Solana is the one.
So every blockchain that I talk about and every blockchain that I am in favor of or against, I use, right? I build on, right? I build applications. I build trading systems on them. So I love Ethereum. I love a lot of the L1s. I love a lot of the L2s, but they simply cannot match the throughput and scalability that Solana can. Now, can they catch up? Sure, it's possible. And that's why Anza and Firedancer and all the other players need to be really focused. And Galaxy, frankly, we build a lot on Solana. But I became really bullish around last year when I started to see the real power. So there's something that's really interesting. If you watch like crypto YouTube, like, not the established players like yourself, but like sort of like the underbelly of crypto YouTube where they're really just pumping prices, right? What you'll see is a lot of influencers, I'll call them crypto influencers, that will always talk about like different blockchains and how fast they are and how many transactions they can execute. But then the question is, okay, they can potentially do that. Do they in fact do that though? Right? Mm-hmm. And Solana is the only blockchain that not only can absorb 65,000 transactions a second, but actually does it, right? Solana has consistently had the highest volumes over the last 18 months. Solana has consistently had the highest rev over the last 18 months. Rev is not just a proxy for like making money for businesses that are on chain. It's also a proxy of, do you as a user want to use that blockchain? And do you get enough value out of it relative to any other network that you're willing to pay for it? It's a massively powerful metric, and Solana has been crushing it on that since. So based on those metrics and our ability to build on Solana and trade on Solana, we think that just the ceiling is very high, and we think it's very much in the prime position. And that's why we, a core group of us within Galaxy, really push for getting into the DAT game.